Hey, hockey fans and families, we've got something to tell you about NHL Sense Arena, our title sponsor. They're rolling out a monthly off-season training pack program with guided objectives for both players and goalies to help kids stay motivated and improve all summer long so they can come back ready, not rusty for next season. It all starts right now in June with the new Elite Campus Prep Training Pack, which features drills and training plans inspired by top colleges, junior teams, and elite hockey programs. And players who compete all the monthly training plans will unlock a limited edition virtual jersey and badge for their Sense Arena locker room. Plus, you'll get entered into a chance to win a special prize at the end of the month. They are always thinking of new stuff over there at Sense Arena. And remember, there's a ton inside the platform, including regular competitions and contests, 3-on-3 NHL games in VR, new training updates, of course, Dangle Pro, something we love here. We've shown you that online. But best of all, NHL Sense Arena is continuing that off-season pricing, just $299 for an entire year of unlimited training for both skaters and goalies with up to 4 unique user profiles. So if you've got siblings or you've got multiple kids, this is for you. Visit nhl.sensearena.com/OKPH and you'll get an additional $25 off on top of the off-season pricing. That's pretty cool. And that's basically a free month of NHL Sense Arena for our listeners. So this is something you're going to want to check out. It is a tool for your hockey player. Speaking of tools for your hockey player, let's get you into this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome back to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. In year 6, you're still coming back to listen to the show. God, we love all of you. I'm Elias, joined by Mike Bonelli and Christie Casciano-Burns. And today's guest, Andrew Trimble, lives at the intersection of development, culture, and long-term growth in youth hockey. That could be the description for the show, so it's a perfect guest. He's the general manager and co-owner of the New England Wolves Hockey Club, helping guide a junior program, and he's also the founder of Scoring Concepts, a skill development company serving players across New Hampshire. He's the author of Beyond the Scoreboard, a book focused on leadership, culture, and the human side of youth sports. And, as we love here, he's coached from the learn to skate all the way to the collegiate level, covering the entire gamut that all of you want to hear about. Andrew Trimble, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Andrew, what a resume you have. You are perfect for our show. So let's just get started with kind of getting to know you a little bit better, because that's what we like to do. So you played NCAA Division III hockey at Buffalo State. You're now running a junior program, skill development company. I would imagine that perspective that you got from just your playing days really helps you in your role now with development, doesn't it?
For sure. It's funny. A lot of the concepts that we talk about on these types of podcasts really were ingrained in me from my grandfather and my father. My grandfather worked for the New Jersey Devils for 25 years and was really instrumental in getting junior leagues formed, like the Metropolitan Junior Hockey League on the East Coast. And then my dad was this really great grassroots coach where he, formed programs, started up street hockey leagues, ran hockey camps down at the Ocean Ice Palace in Bricktown, New Jersey. And, I saw that being lived out every single day in my childhood life. So, I developed as a hockey player, but then when my playing days were over, I took a pause in my hockey and focused on a career in financial services, but was drawn back into the game for just those reasons, to become, a skill development coach, having kids have fun in the game and building programs. And it's been a real rewarding experience.
Yep. I want to say real quick, Andrew, I'm glad you brought that up, because hockey in New Jersey at the time you're talking about is rapidly growing. I think people in New Jersey today, there's a lot up there. All right. But at the time you're talking about, that was not the case. And we're around the same age. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe specifically some of the things that you saw that I don't want to say may have been forgotten, but that really shaped you? I'm glad you brought that up, because again, on the East Coast, again, hockey is somewhat developed in terms of at least rinks and places to play, right? Well, there's still more development that can happen in terms of organizations and players, but man, it sprouted at that time, right? What were some of the things you saw that kind of blew your mind or that really stuck with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny to go back and look at the way New Jersey was and then the way now New Jersey is. When I grew up in the 80s and early 90s, there were only a handful of rinks. the Ocean Ice Palace in Bricktown was the hub in Monmouth County. But then you had, it's called the Jersey Shore Arena that came around 92, 93. And then within 10 years of that, you had all these rinks sprout up, and it's just ballooned, the whole thing. And, when I was going into my freshman year of high school, having played in the brick hockey club, I had a bunch of brick hockey parents who were like, Andy, you can, live with us or use our address, because there was a lot of that going on where, you could kind of bring in kids to attend public school. But my dad as a teacher was like, that's not happening. And he worked really hard to get Manasquan High School to have a hockey program. And by my junior year, we had that. But it started off, I think my freshman year, there were only like 5 high schools in Monmouth County, New Jersey that had high school hockey. And now it's got to be 40. It's got to be 35, 40. It's an incredible growth.
Well, and I'll say too, if anybody's ever been to a New Jersey Devils game and you walk around that arena, they have all of the high school jerseys on display, and it goes for a while. Or if you've ever seen their kind of like senior night game, I mean, they're completely covering the ice. So thanks for sharing that, Andrew. I always like to share that because I know that there's listeners in places around the country that have what you just described, like not a lot of access to ice. And I think that development is part of the conversation here, right? When we talk about youth hockey, in the sense of it's not just about using what you have, it's about growing the game as much as possible, which is something great. So
yeah, I think it's, and I think even that time, and we talk about the growth of hockey because of pro franchises coming into the regions, right? The New Jersey Devils were a late addition to the to the New York metropolitan area, and I think certainly that growth, you could see that growth curve happened because of the involvement with the NHL clubs. And I think that's why, some of these southern areas that we're in are so strong, is because those NHL clubs, pull those players into their ecosystem. But it's great to see that your family and you and the people involved in that level, caught on to that momentum, right? And started building stuff off of that. And I'm wondering, as we all get into, all of us that get into hockey as a player, often say, well, I'm never going to do it that way, or oh, that's got to be easier to do. What are some of the things you saw from your transition as a player to like a general manager and somebody now running a hockey program that you might have thought like, oh, I thought that was going to be easy, or like that's really a lot different than I thought as a player? What goes on? Obviously, you had a little bit of different background, right? Because your family was involved in the organizational aspect. But what are some things that you would give examples of that a guy coming out of playing and maybe a skill development person, and all of a sudden they're a general manager of an organization? What are some of the perspectives that you have from that perspective?
I think I had a great, life works in crazy ways, right? Like you don't know what you're getting into oftentimes until you're actually in it. And I worked after college in financial services for a number of years, and then I had that bug, right, to get into coaching. And one of my good high school buddies, he got the head coaching job at my high school, and he said, well, I'd like you to be my assistant coach. And it kind of just snowballed from there. But, then another friend introduced me to the junior program. He was operating out of the Jersey Shore Arena. His name's Oaktai Armigan. And he got me to coach with him. But the skills that I possessed working in financial services and being able to talk to people and build a rapport, they really helped me with, operating a junior franchise. Because, at the level that I coach, if you can't identify kids, build a rapport, recruit kids, and we do a lot of recruiting at the junior level. I don't really recruit at 8U or 10U. let me make that abundantly clear. But that really helped me and gave me a different skill set than other coaches had. So, for people that are transitioning from playing to coaching or playing to managing, it's not just about what you can do on the ice. There's a whole number of skills that can really transform the type of person that you are and really make an impact in what you're doing.
One of those skills in hockey that we'll talk about, and I do love that you're talking about how we'll say the real world affects the hockey world in terms of, you can take a skill set from anything and apply it to the game. But when we actually talk about the game, Andrew, one of the topics we seem to bring up every time we have someone with your expertise on is hockey IQ and the lack of hockey IQ in youth hockey. So again, you played college hockey, you've been around the game your whole life. We love to ask this question, right? What is your kind of definition of hockey IQ? And then how does that differ from some of the hard skill sets, like the shooting, the passing, the skating? Because we all know it's something that, I don't know if lacking is the right word. It's not developing like it used to. So what are your thoughts on hockey IQ, and how are we starting getting it back into the game?
Hockey IQ to me really is about finding space. You know, if you're in the offensive zone and you don't get a lot of pucks on your stick, it's probably because you're not finding space. You're not finding areas to be open. You're not finding ways to get the puck from your teammates. And I think that a lot of that is because kids don't really watch that much hockey anymore. You know, if you're watching, I mean, it's kind of like, it's embarrassing, but, you know, I would plan my week as a kid around the Devils schedule, you know, like, so I could watch all the Devils games.
It's not embarrassing at all.
Yeah. You know, and we had sports channel, so I'd watch a lot of the Islanders games. So then they got MSG and I'd watch the Ranger games. So maybe that's embarrassing, but I watched a ton of hockey. And I think that with kids these days, they watch clips, they watch brief videos of plays, but they don't know how the play develops.
Right.
And that's where hockey IQ comes in, being able to find space, get open, and then implement that into your own game.
But
yeah, and they only see success, right? I mean, they're only really seeing the successful plays. Like, I think hockey IQ comes from the failure after failure after failure. And I think to your point, like when you see a clip of somebody doing something, like, oh, that was easy. Like that person just did that. And I think we forget, you know, we talk about this on the show, and I know what you do, you know, on your social media side and all the teaching stuff that you put out there. You know, it's all about like the development of the skill and the play, not the end result of the play. Like the end result is just a cherry on top. It's like what happened from the goal line up. And I think that's where, you know, that's really where we miss a lot of that in our education with the kids, because we're not speaking the same language anymore.
I want to say too, this isn't just limited to kids, right? And I'll always, anytime I'm critical of coaches, I always say this: most of you are volunteering. God bless you. What we're discussing is to help you get more tools. I don't think coaches do a great job of teaching this either, because we are also focused on the end result of a goal or the score. You know, not all the time, folks. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's easy to get lost in that side of the game. You want to win. You're competitive. But the drills we do at practice and then the breakdowns of plays that we do in games, to me, is lacking a little bit too. We don't talk enough about the kid who maybe set the pick in the defensive zone to allow the puck to get out. We don't talk a lot about the really great breakout pass or the really great decision with the puck on the way out of the zone, or the lack of blue line turnovers, or the immense amount of blue line turnovers. These are things as coaches we have a responsibility to teach. Right. I also wrote a note down here too, Andrew. I love that you talked about. It's not embarrassing you scheduled your week around games. I did the same thing. And I for any kid listening, I want you to try and understand this. It's important. I'm going to sound like an old dad man here for a minute, but listen, we had almost no access to video when we watched the game. The access was whatever was on live TV, and then the begging that ESPN might show a highlight, which they rarely did back at that time. All right. You have unlimited access, kids and coaches, to footage. Unlimited, dating way back. It is such a resource if used the right way. If you're just doing short highlight clips, they're fun. And I'm not telling you not to watch them. I'm really not. But if you don't see how that play developed, like everyone here is saying, you're missing out. Andrew, I remember going to used video stores and scouring the VHS section to try and find any NHL highlight films, which they did put out back then. You get a couple a year, or Don Cherry would put out a highlight reel. You know, but you're right. Like, watching those was the best way to teach yourself in a way, right? And, you know, what's funny is that the highlights back then were very different than the highlight. A highlight back then might be a toe drag.
Right.
Right. Or I remember when like Peter Forsberg and Pavel Datsyuk came in the league, and unbelievably talented players. But the truth is that they evolve the game, that you see these moves now every single game. But when Forsberg would come down and deke three people, it would blow your mind back then. It was, you know, and then I saw in the Stanley Cup final, we're recording this on June 8th. I'm seeing this by both teams almost every shift now. What we saw back then.
Hey, listen, when I grew up, if you went over the center line when you were a right winger and got into the left-hand lane, you got sat for a period. So, I mean, the everything is different. You know, it's definitely a different mindset and watching and the evolution of what we got to see. And,
Right.
and I think there's zero from your perspective too, Lead, from coaches to players. There is zero reason not to have a higher level of hockey IQ now than ever before.
Right.
There's more access to every bit of data that you want and pieces of the game. It's just a matter of, are we using that in the right way, and are we pursuing it? And and what Andrew does too, which I love, are we following good coaches that are going out of their way to find these things and presenting them out there?
Yeah.
And I think that's where
pushing the science forward.
The right follows are important, because you're getting the right information back.
I'll say this last thing. I'm going to turn this into a question, Andrew. Mike, you'll laugh at this, Christie, too. You too. I was explaining to my kids the other night what two-line passing was. All right, and again, for the audience listening, it's a fun little exercise to explain this to your kids. And they both went, but why would they do that? Why would you have that rule? That probably sucked. I said, it did suck. Okay, but it's funny how much the game evolves and changes. Now, Andrew, the question to you is this: so when we talk about how to coach hockey IQ, Mike, maybe a year ago, made one of the greatest statements on the show of, why does every drill have to end with a shot on net, right? And then we talked about how drills can end in a decision. It doesn't have to end in this, like there's an ending to the drill. What are some of the ways you provide hockey IQ education to kids or coaches within your organization?
Yeah, I mean, we follow a lot of USA Hockey's models with ADM and our station-based practices, but then we like to finish with a lot of small area games. One of my favorite small area games, we call it the tire game. Everywhere in the country, they call it a different game, but there's 3 sets of tires, and you score points by moving away from the puck, finding space, passing through those tires. You get a point. Yeah. You can't pass through the same tires consecutively, and it really creates. You can do it at any level, pretty much. Like 10U pass, you can do it with anybody. Kids really have to think the game. They got to find space. They got to get open. When they lose the puck, they got to find a guy and defend and get a stick in a passing lane. So small area games are a great way to teach hockey IQ, but also doing things that are kind of like, we have run a free street hockey program every single May here at the rink. We buy the t-shirts. We have no offsides. We have no real teams. The kids come, whoever they come for that particular day. We divide up teams and we play for about 3-4 weeks on every Sunday night. And the information that kids get from that street hockey in terms of, even the 8-year-old kids who are just getting into full ice games, and now they got to switch ends between the second and, in between the first and second period. Street hockey is such a great way to teach finding space and teach hockey IQ. Yeah. I love street hockey.
I do too. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to ask you this question. This is coming from a hockey mom perspective. So what I'm seeing now are a lot of kids putting enormous pressure on themselves. So how, as a parent, do you help balance that? You want to build their confidence, but you don't want them to have unreal expectations either. So help us strike a balance there, Andrew.
Yeah, that's a tough question. Every kid is, and you guys talk about it on the podcast, so every kid's journey is different. Every kid is different in terms of their maturation from, pre-adolescence to now becoming, an adult. And I just think that the less pressure we can put on our kids, the better off they're going to be. We have to instill confidence in them. I had my son Baron. He had a really good couple of years as like 6-7-year-old. So, there was stuff going on here at our rink. So I moved him down to the Seacoast Spartans for a year, and he had a good experience, but it wasn't the same. He wanted to play around his friends, and he hated the hour car ride. He liked, the 10-minute car ride. So we brought him back to playing on his local team, and he's starting to thrive again. And, sometimes those little things, just making sure the car ride is fun, making sure that he's playing with his friends, like those things make a huge difference. We may not think about it. We may just be thinking about the on-ice product and the coaches they're playing for. But for a kid to develop, he's got to have a good time. He's got to have a good support system around him and a good culture that supports one another. Those things are the hidden gems of hockey.
I'm so glad you said that. You're right. They are hidden gems, and you got to value them when they come along.
You know what's funny, guys? I remember growing up, a 45-minute drive being the long drive. And now that's like the regular drive.
It is.
We have kids. We've had parents, I should say, on the they're driving an hour and a half for some of these things. And I always say this too, Andrew, to your point, that if the kid wants it, like if you go into whatever, a higher level organization and it's an opportunity and your kid really wants it, that's great. But if it's the parent deciding and you didn't even confer with your kid, that always scares me a little bit, right? Like one of the pieces of advice, Andrew, I'd love to know about your experience within a junior program with this. One of the pieces of advice, we get asked a lot via email from our listeners, and you all know who you are, about should I go to this organization or that organization? And my first comment back is always, what does your kid want to do? And I'd say about 60% of people, and this isn't a bad thing, I love the people that respond, say, you know what, I haven't asked them. And it's like, that's where you got to start. Okay. And I know there's a fear of, well, my kid might pick the easy thing. Your kid may surprise you, all right, with what they want. But at the end of the day, it's kind of up to them with, what is kind of best for them. You can cultivate the love. You can't create the love. And you got to have that conversation with them. But Andrew, I'm sure in your line of work, especially at the junior level, you're probably asked that daily, not just monthly about, hey, where do I go? What do I do? Where's the advisor? What college? What should I play? What are some of the questions that you get in that junior program, the high level power questions that maybe are not the easiest to answer?
Yeah, that conversation's changed a lot. I've been in the junior stuff for like 15, 20 years, and the conversation has really migrated. It used to always be about, it was league based, that was my opinion. It was always like EJ or AJ. That was the two biggest leagues here on the East Coast. And then the NA came into our region maybe about 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark. So we, being that we were committed to our league or leagues for such a long time, we tried to just change our model. And Tim Kuhns, who co-owns the Wolves with me, are really skill-based coaches, development-focused coaches. So we wanted to create the Wolves being a unique program in that landscape that focuses on development and getting our athletes better. So, we do 2 practices a day, 1 skill practice a day. Our team practices in the afternoon. We have our own gym. We do have our own video room here at the rink. And that kind of takes away some of the conversations about, oh, what college can I go to or what league should I be in? Because the kid sees value in, oh, I can get here and I can get 10 to 15 hours of practice time a week and I can get better. And those are skills that never leave you. So that's what kind of we just chosen to focus our business on.
And then kind of moving forward with that, you rebuilt the junior program. Like you said, you've been there for a long time. I'm interested in the thing that separates your program aside from the hockey, the culture, the standards, the communication, the leadership. I think in the younger age groups, sometimes these are undersold as, oh, that's for the later time period. That's for the higher level programs. And I do not agree. I think that standards start from Adams. Now, again, I don't have the same standard for an 8-year-old as I do for an 18-year-old in the sense of certain aspects, but you will be here on time. You will adhere to a certain code of conduct. Things like that don't change. How did you inject that into the program that you rebuilt?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When I moved up here about 12 years ago, it was the Laconia Leafs, which, Mike knows Will Fay ran that program, and they did well when they first started out. Then kind of things got really difficult when they moved leagues and they didn't have quite the same success. But the one thing that they really did was they integrated with the community. They did a ton of volunteering and community service stuff. So, you fix the things that are broken, right? So we felt that we wanted to keep that community-based concept where we have fans in the building and we have these different projects that we're really involved with each month that can kind of like get our kids in front of our audience, and they're doing good service work in the community. So we kept that going, and then we just kind of improved some of the recruiting and how we were developing players. And then when we took over the youth program about 3 years ago, we saw that stuff going so well, and so many parents were asking us, hey, can our kids be involved with this or that? So we just kind of moved them into that too. So, we'll have our Learn to Play program, which is the only free Learn to Play program in the state of New Hampshire. We have that program running, and we'll have 10-year-olds helping out our 6-year-olds on the ice. We'll have a 12-year-old or 14-year-old helping out with our first-time skaters. And it creates that stick-activity where kids want to be involved in that. They get more ice time. They want to be on the ice. And it also it's good for everybody. So it requires more work for sure. but like, I got time.
I think one of the things too, that Andrew does up there, which I thought, talking to Dave Starman and obviously I know that region very well from my time at Plymouth State, was like just the way the community really rallies around those kids that do help. And I think all of us that have been involved with junior hockey know the benefit of like the billet family, of the big brother, big sister type programming, the opportunity for, a 6 and 7 and 8-year-old see an 18-year-old, 19, 20-year-old, young man playing hockey. And that might as well be, a Boston Bruin up in that area. Like they don't differentiate between the level of play. They just differentiate between, does this person really want to be out here and be with me, helping me develop? And I think that's definitely one of the attributes of junior hockey, especially in the United States, is the need to develop that community, correct?
Definitely. And Dave, his son Ryan, played for us for a year, did a great job. We loved having Ryan with us, and having Dave and Shireen up for like every other weekend wasn't too bad either, because he'd bring me up bagels from New York, which is something I miss up here in New Hampshire. But one of you hit on a really important thing. It's billets. My goodness gracious, there's so many junior programs especially in our kind of space at the kind of pay to play level. And they just put them in big houses, or they do dormitories, and they're missing the boat on that. I really think that billets are great for the kid, great for the community, great for the kids that live in that house. And you might have to work for it. You might have to kind of really, spell out to some of those parents what that experience looks like. But everybody benefits from the billet experience when it's done right. And there's so many horror stories from animal houses with junior hockey programs that we stay clear of that stuff.
Well, I'll mention too real quick. I have seen a lot of NHL players in the Hall of Fame speech credit their billet family, including Wayne Gretzky, for helping them shape into the person that they are. Andrew, if that's not the greatest endorsement for what you're saying, none of them go into the boys in the animal house back in '82. I wouldn't have been here without you. You know why? Because those guys didn't end up making it, most likely. You know what I mean? But no, you hear,
for sure.
I've heard Wayne Gretzky again. I always love to use him as an example. But like you hear him talk about these families that took him in, keeping in mind he was like 14, 15 years old when it started. I agree with you. Like, we're shaping human beings here. All right. All of it matters. And if that's not at the forefront of your development strategy, the human being, you are failing these kids. And they are kids, whether they're 18 or 8. All right. If the conversation doesn't go through your mind of how is this going to help them become a better person, I think we fail them completely. And just so you know, in doing that, you'll make them a better hockey player almost always. Right. I don't know people who follow that. It goes like, oh, you gave it a good try, Chuck, but we only made you a better person. Like, nobody thinks that way, right? So
yeah,
just thought.
Yeah, kudos to the billet families out there. I know a few of them. You've done wonderful things for both your family and for that hockey player too. But let's talk about, Andrew, the path to junior hockey. We get that question all the time. What does it take to get there? What kind of qualities do you look for as you're evaluating a player? What makes the difference in getting to junior hockey?
Sure. Well, like you guys have talked about, every path is different. We try to look in places that are kind of underserved. Like every year we go out to the Czech Republic and there's some of the systems in those Central European countries like Latvia and Czechia don't have really well-developed junior models where they take a 16 and 17-year-old kid and they can play against their peers. Oftentimes they're playing against adults in the professional leagues or lower level professional leagues over there. So we've done really well with recruiting a number of really good Latvians, a number of really good players from the Czech Republic. And that's kind of bolstered our roster. Very few of our kids are really from our surrounding area because, Laconia is the biggest town in the area and it's only about 17,000 people. So we really have to go outside to find these players. And we used to go to a lot of USA Hockey camps, like some of the affiliate and district camps. That was a great place to find players. Your all-star games with your high schools are great places to find players. But over the last 2 or 3 years, since we've really developed our youth program, we've gotten a number of good every year, 3 or 4 kids that can be part of that culture and we can build around those players. So every player is different for junior hockey, but they can come from all places.
I spent some time in Europe, Andrew, and one of the things that was interesting to me was when players would move around between countries or even around regions, there was a group of people that would be upset of, why aren't you just taking our local players? Now, you just made a very good case for why that's happening. But I do want to ask the question for the people at home that would probably be asking this question. Well, if we're not developing the people at home, what are we doing? And that's not an accusation at you. It's an honest question, right? Because there are places for everybody to play. What would you say to that? Is that, hey, maybe we need to develop kids better, or that's what youth hockey is for, not so much junior hockey? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one because we don't really have that problem per se. Like, we are a very small youth program in a very small rural area. So if you're good enough, we give you the opportunity to kind of continue and play your game. But for those areas that are more diverse or more populated, there might be more to that story than we know. Like,
sure, we
try to recruit kids who have good body language, who have good character, are good both on and off the ice. So sometimes if you're getting a local kid, you might know him a little bit too well, and that might be the reason why you don't want him in your program, because all that stuff matters.
Yeah, and you also said it too, right? That stuff matters, right? I always say there's 2 answers to that question. One is, what is the organization doing? And then what are you doing, right? Like, what skill sets are you developing? And are we behind? Are we ahead? Again, this is a much larger topic for another episode. But I love what you said, to especially the audience maybe thinking that question. It's probably a little more complicated than you think. It's very easy to point a finger. I mean, but from my point of view, it's no different than being like, why are the New Jersey Devils players not from New Jersey? I mean, that's kind of what you're dealing with at this situation.
Like, you always wonder, like, especially at the junior level, right? When you see players that are getting like tendered or getting signed and they're not getting, and you're like, well, why didn't their own organization sign them? Like, they're right there in the building. And sometimes, just at the youth hockey level too. I mean, I used to be very offended. Like, I would, as a hockey director, I think, I would get really hurt and offended when I see a player leave my program to go somewhere else. And sometimes it was just a reflection of maybe we pigeonholed this kid to be, this player, and that person just is getting a different perspective from a different, somebody looking at him differently. And I think that's so important when these kids become 18, 19, 20 years old, is that sometimes, they get a chance to kind of reinvent themselves. And that's what junior hockey allows you to do. It allows you to, jump out of your comfort zone in your community. Maybe right. You're a good player there, but you get to go somewhere else where nobody knows you, get an opportunity to have a different look, maybe have different assignments and different roles. And these are things that, good organizations do a good job of, is identifying those players that can fit in. At the junior level, it's not all about like the top 20 kids, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like, what are you doing? How are you right. playing in a role of this team? Because this team is made up of this type of player and this kind of lineup. And that's a really hard puzzle to fix sometimes.
And we should mention too, I think there's an important distinction here, especially for the younger hockey families listening. Junior hockey is a different level of development than youth hockey. Junior hockey is not youth hockey. And I think sometimes there's not the distinction there. Like, junior hockey is the next level of development, or a next level of development after youth hockey. We merge the two together because junior players can be pretty young sometimes, right? But the truth is this, we always say there's no one path. This is a path. Right, Andrew?
Yeah. And, I would say that in terms of the Latvian players and players from Europe that we've gotten, they're just really excited and appreciative to be here. So right. When we get a player like that who takes extra reps and is on the ice more than he, takes every available chance to improve his game, and we're comparing that with a local kid who may be a good player, but we've seen him, not get those extra reps, not work hard in his off-ice workouts. So sometimes that familiarity almost gives us too much information. I remember when I was making a decision after I graduated high school, and had a chance I could play locally for at the time it was in the Metropolitan Junior Hockey League, the Junior Devils, or I could go to New Hampshire and play up here. And my dad said, I think you got to go. I think you don't want to stay local. He said it's an opportunity to like meet new people, build a new network, play in front of different people. And the kids you're going to be hanging around here are the kids who, you know, don't have that same ambition or just going to go to community college or get a job. So I made that decision. It was one of the best decisions I ever made.
I bet you've had a lot of those moments where you just step back and you're in awe and you say, wow, this is why I do this, especially when you've helped develop a player from another country. That's amazing.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny, like everybody has their success stories, and some of our success stories aren't kids who played pro hockey. They're kids who came here, developed, and then we helped them. And we had one kid, actually he's a New York kid, this kid named Jake Drucker. He had played up in Canada for a junior program and then was looking to play his last year in the States. And he came to us and, you know, he had some different opportunities, but he was kind of looking at some low-level Division III, and I don't say that with to criticize those programs, but he was looking at some lower-level Division III because that's where he could play. But we looked at his academic transcript, and he was an Ivy League candidate. Like his grades were phenomenal. So we steered him from going to a low-level Division III player where he could have been in and out of the lineup to going to NYU and being an ACHA player and having a really good experience. And then he ended up getting his law degree from UPenn. Wow. And now he's flourishing. So I think those life decisions, we try to do the right thing for our kids and making good educated decisions for the rest of their life rather than just making a purely hockey decision.
I love that answer because that really is development. As we said, of a person, you know. And I always joke to say, like, if that irks you, what he just said, I don't know.
It makes my heart so happy to hear that.
Yeah. You know, Christie, I should say it like this: if I was faced as a father with my son going to an Ivy League school, or potentially playing, we'll just say Division III NCAA hockey. Now, me personally, there's a version of me that's like, oh man, that's a tough one. But at the end of the day, it's not tough at all. You send them to the Ivy League school. Once my own ego gets out of the way, that's a pretty easy decision.
So Jake was a remarkable kid. The year before he came to us, he didn't disclose to me. I'll say this: he had a knee issue. He had an infection in some kind of, I forget completely, but he ended up needing a whole knee scoped before he even came to us. And I said, Jake, you're kind of, you know, you're not in the shape yet. I expected you to be. And he's like, well, coach, I was up for 3 months with my knee surgery. And it was like, oh, okay. Okay. And then he ended up, his father passed away in February of our season. And he went home for the weekend to grieve his father. And then he came back to his teammates and helped them in the playoffs. Just a remarkable kid.
What a story. What a story. Yeah. Now let's listen to your story. You wrote Beyond the Scoreboard. Tell us what inspired you to write that and tell us all about the book.
Sure. Well, thanks, guys. This is, I think it's my 6th or 7th book. Some are hockey related, some are not. But what I found is that, you know, there's so much that goes into hockey, and hockey should be the framework for kids who love hockey, the framework to teach you about life. And Beyond the Scoreboard is about leadership. It's about some of those experiences I've had with certain players, some of the experiences in my own family that made me and made those around me the types of people that we want to be. And, you know, there's chapters about, you know, culture. There's chapters about overcoming adversity. And I'm really proud of the book. And one of the stories I talk about is my Aunt Virginia. She's a big Buffalo Sabres fan, and she dealt with a tremendous amount of loss that I didn't find out until really she had passed. Like, she had lost a child when he was a toddler. Her husband died when he was relatively young. But meeting my Aunt Virginia, you would have never known that she had any kind of this, you know, these horrible life-altering tragedies, because she was always happy. She was always focused on the next day. She was always supportive of the family, and she had a tremendous amount of community resources with friends and family up in Buffalo. So I tried to make it really personal in terms of those kind of stories.
We've all got a story to tell within hockey too. I love that you shared yours, Andrew, because I think a lot of times people feel like, well, my story is not that big of a story. Truth is, we all learn from each other. We're all trying to push this science forward, right? And I always joke about academia, like it's called the study of medicine. It's called the study of other things because it doesn't stop. It doesn't end, right? Hockey and the relationships within hockey are no different. And I would make the argument too that when we look at it from a youth hockey standpoint, and Christie is a famous author with this too, we can read as many NHL biographies as we want. I'm a fan of those. The truth is this: if you want a youth hockey, you got to read about youth hockey. You got to read about the experiences within the level that you're at. And I think that every year that we continue, we learn and we grow, and it's kind of on all of us to make sure that we're pushing that forward or pushing back, when needed. I spoke a few times about parents in this episode. I always love to ask high-level coaches this, from your vantage point, how do you deal with parents, if at all, at the junior level? And just what's your thoughts on parents within the game? I'll keep you in mind that the audience for this show is exactly the audience you love, right? They're here listening. They want to learn. But we all know a parent or two that maybe push that from time to time. So what's your thoughts on parents? How do you deal with parents? And do you have any advice for parents?
Sure. Well, I coach the junior stuff, but then I also have my son playing. So I generally coach an 8U or 10U team every year. So I get kind of like snapshot of like the before and the after in parenting. But what I found was the most difficult level I ever coached and interacted with parents was 16U. That was really a tough level because parents they were still building. So they weren't like, they didn't see the end of the road. Like their kid were right in the heart of it. And they all had ambitions that their kid would be a Division I player or a professional player. That hadn't passed them by yet. So that was a really tough level. I had a lot of I got more emails those 2 years than ever else in my coaching career. The 10U and 8U kids that I coach, those parents are generally pretty good. We set a standard of, the 24-hour rule. We have a preseason meeting in the locker room. So we do all the stuff that we should be doing to make sure that communication is on point. And then our program, our kids get equal ice time. We're not shortening the bench at 8U and 10U to win a game in September. That doesn't really appeal to us. The junior stuff, those can be tough, but you got to kind of weed those out. That's part of that recruiting, like we talked about. Like if you've got a local kid, he may be the leading scorer on the team, but if the parent is emailing every single week, I'm sorry, we're going to go with a different player at the junior level because we have that choice, and you're buying the parent as well as the player in that same package.
Yeah, that's important to know, parents. I hope you took some notes on that.
Wow, we're all trying to push it forward, Christie. And look, I'll say too that hockey can be interesting. Andrew, it's funny you brought up coaching on the bench in those young games, and evening out the ice time. I know, just talking to some youth coaches, that's not always easy. When it's a close game and it's late, and you want to get your best players back out there, and I would say, look, if you can work it for that to happen, that's great. But if you're starting to shorten the bench with 10 minutes left or 8 minutes left in the third in a youth game. It's a disservice. And I don't love the excuse of, well, part of development is them learning how to deal with that. Not yet. Not so much at that age level. Okay. Understanding roles within a lineup or being a third or fourth line player, that comes down the line. If we're not developing them, we are failing them. But Andrew, you are not failing these kids in any way. I love everything that you've said today. I'm going to invite you to come on to a ride to the rink because I think I'm looking at our rundown. We got a couple questions here that are tailored perfectly for kids. So for the parents listening, make sure you tune into that ride to the rink that's going to come out right after this episode, because I know you listen to this in the car with your kids with your mouth shut, all of you, right? That's what you do. You don't talk over us. You let us talk. But Andrew, you've been a great guest today. I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Well, it's been my pleasure, guys. And it's a real honor. And I love what you're doing for the game and teaching players and parents the right way to interact with the sport of hockey. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. And like I said, we always say it. We're a village, right? Takes a village. And conversations like these are, I think, the gift for all of us, including us, right? That we get to find different ways and different experiences within the game that try and help grow it. So that's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure you listen for that ride to the rink. I'm teasing it a lot. All right. If you have any questions for us, email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com, or you can text us using the link accompanying this episode in the description. But for Andrew Trimble, Mike Bonelli, Christie Casciano-Burns, I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you on the next Our Kids Play Hockey. Everybody take care. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.